Several Pacers players spoke this week. Johnny Furphy provides a health update. You'll hear from Huff and Braden Smith. We talked to Tyrese Haliburton and Aaron Nesmith, plus a new TV deal for the Pacers, and Bennedict Mathurin's new contract has people asking questions. We'll get to all of it today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and Circle City Spin, and today I have relocated my office, and we have a lot to get to from quite the week in Pacerland. They had their charity softball events, kind of Pacers-y, kind of not, kind of Colty, kind of Tyrese Haliburton-y, and we talked about so many players. Haliburton himself, Aaron Nesmith, Huff, Braden Smith, a couple others. Lots of updates to get to. I talked to Johnny Furphy about his injury and where he's at rehab-wise. I want to talk about so many other notebooky items that I think you need to know about. Their new TV deal, Yugi somewhere else. Haliburton spoke before all this stuff that we got to chew through. And then at the end, Ben Mathurin, a new contract. New Orleans, what? People are asking Pacers questions about it, and I think you're asking the wrong question, and I'll explain why. We start, though, with the week that was for the Pacers in the land of softball. I got to catch up with Johnny Furphy off to the side just for a little bit to catch up with him on where his ACL recovery is at, how long this could take, and then I wrote a story and I did some research. But first of all, he's on the court. Chad Buchanan kind of alluded to this in late June at his press conference early in the offseason, but Johnny Furphy is back on the court. He's doing stuff, not quite 5-on-5 yet, but he told me he's doing well in his rehab, which is, of course, of note on its own, but provided some insights there. As for a specific return deadline, I did ask him. He did not have one specifically, said it's too hard to know about that or to know if training camp is possible. But I would say this. One, it's notable that he completely did not rule it out. And two, I did some research with Jeff Stott's website, In Street Clothes. He tracks a bunch of NBA injuries. This is a very old study, 2014. Now, to be clear, recovery in medicine has gotten better in the decade since, but the average recovery time for ACLs in his database is 11 months. But he admits in there that number is inflated by two conservative reviews and estimates and timelines for Derrick Rose and Nerlens Noel. It's a little closer, like 10.5, 10 in that case, which would have like a end of the year, December return for Furphy. And if there's advances in medicine or he's young and heals faster, it could be on the earlier side. That is purely speculation for me. He also has a note in there that 72% of players whose injuries came before the All-Star break in the prior season came back on opening night the next year. However, of course, Furphy's came like within 5 days of the All-Star break, so I'm not banking on that, but I am saying there's like enough of his research to me suggests that the year 2026 is in bounds, but I am totally guessing based on previous studies and what both Chad Buchanan and Johnny Furphy have said about Johnny Furphy. Tyrese Haliburton, of course, spoke. He spoke last week about basketball topics. This time he was mostly asked about the event, which I will use as my leaping off point to say really cool stuff. The Pacers did this. The Colts made a $100K donation at one point if Haliburton was able to get on base, and he hit a roller right past Daniel Jones. And I was actually wondering if Daniel Jones scooped up that grounder and he could look to first base and throw Tyrese Haliburton out and make the owners of his team not donate $100,000 to charity. What's going through your head in a moment like that? The ball made it to the outfield. It didn't matter. But very cool that Tyrese at least had the initiative to ask the right people to put this together. He admitted that a lot of other people like put on the event. As for basketball, he's very excited about training camp. He's chomping at the bit. And he was one of the guys who admitted and talked about, and he kind of alluded to this a couple weeks ago, and he talked that quite a few of the Pacers went out to LA very recently to all spend some time together, a mini camp adjacent activity for the ones who were able to go and get together. Of course, for Haliburton, this is a lot of his first time playing with some of those guys in that setting, which I thought was noteworthy. Aaron Nesmith was not one of the guys there. We talked to him right after. As the event itself, since this is a charity thing, really fun to see some quite good baseball players. Obi Toppin played really well. Riley Leonard of the Colts was spectacular. He was really good. Huff hit a home run. A couple other Pacers guys went deep, but really fun event. If you can go next year, if they keep doing it, I'd highly encourage it. It was super fun to see these guys in like a goofy element, and they were like fake competitive for a second, and then the game score got out of hand, and they donated a ton of money to charity. Rick Carlisle's Drive and Dish was a big recipient there. Food insecurity, love that. We talked to Aaron Nesmith. He talked about his offseason focuses. Of course, this is I believe, since he was with Boston before, only the second time of his career his team has not been in the postseason. So he's not used to summers this long. He's been working on putting the ball on the floor. I think that is naturally very smart of him to do so. And we talked a little bit to him about, I was standing kind of far away, so I couldn't hear him very well, and I walked away sooner. But one thing he talked about is kind of just the team's vibe and spirit about how much they want to play this year and their hopes to get back to the playoffs. And you just feel that emanating from all these guys, given how last season went and the time when they've had away since their last real game of the finals. And they hoped they'd have a lot of real games last year, and they didn't. So two guys you'll get to hear from now because the audio is actually decent enough. One is Jay Huff, and I kind of wanted to put the questions in here that I was leading. But one of my things that I've been thinking about with him is his whole career, right? He's been right on the fringe of the NBA prior to his Pacers tenure. Two-way with I don't remember the order of these teams, but the Lakers are in there, the Grizzlies, the Nuggets, the Wizards in some order. He's bouncing around to all those teams. And then even 1 year ago, right now, he was on a two-way with Memphis. He might not even have been on that. And he got his contract converted to a standard very early in the season with the Grizzlies. That's to say, every summer of his career, he's been either fighting for a contract. Well, he has been fighting for a contract, and he switched teams every year. So part of what I wanted to get to the heart of with him was, hey, like what is this like that it's different, that you're with the same team, and that he provided the clarity, like, also, I'm not fighting for money, right? And that does change your focuses and vibe. So here's, part of our conversation with him about that.
So this is your first time one season next with the same team of your whole career, right?
I mean, other than the G League, but even then it was ultimate. Yeah.
Has that shaped your summer in any way differently than the rest?
Not having to move. I love being employed. That is really nice.
Yeah, no contract negotiations either for the first time, right?
Yeah, it was great.
What has the focus been for you now that you know what the Pacers require of you, and you guys have expectations next year?
Yeah, a lot of running. Run the rim, run the floor, trying to learn how to play with Ty. We've been playing a lot of pickup. Woke up a little bit while still trying to be fast. Been in the weight room a lot. Been working on my jumper a lot.
How much weight have you gained?
10, 15, something like that.
So you stayed in Indy the whole summer and everything like that. I mean, how most of it?
A good chunk of the summer. We traveled quite a bit. We went, with NBPA, we went to Spain. We traveled around, seen family, everything like that. But aside from that, we've been mostly here, which has been lovely.
You mentioned playing with Ty. I mean, how helpful was that just to get a sense of? I mean, you understood the way the team plays, but to get a sense of how he operates.
Yeah, I mean, he makes everybody around him better, and I think that's really useful to have. Obviously, we were missing him a lot last year, and I think just having him back, learning to play together. He's got a lot of guys back who played with him, but it's been good to kind of learn that. We hadn't done that yet.
So I mean to make no suggestion that Jay Huff will just magically be better because of these factors that he's never had before, but I do find that to be compelling as like an interesting part of his career. What's that going to mean for what his summer looks like, what he can focus on, how effective he will be. After we talked to him, we talked to Braden Smith. First time since he signed, like a week after he signed, he was doing media. And I wanted to talk to him about, one, of course, how's it feel to sign? But two, he had to really trust the Pacers, right? He had to sit through this and they had to decide what they're going to do and not sign him. And if he gets hurt, that's a terrible thing, right? So I wanted to get to the heart of that with him. And we heard a little bit more about his summer league and stuff. Now I have to cut this interview early because there was loud music playing and I don't want to get, too much noise and audio crap going on here. So here's what you can mostly hear of Braden Smith talking about his two-way situation.
Braden, how did it feel to you for actually officially signed last week?
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, obviously being from here and watching them my entire life growing up, and obviously being a fan of everybody, and now being a part of that and get to experience that, it's an awesome opportunity.
What was that process of trust like waiting that long for it to actually be finalized?
Yeah, no, I mean, through the whole process, I knew it was going to end up like that's what they already said, so I already had an idea. Plus, none of it, I mean, it's a contract, and it doesn't really need to be signed until, November-ish. So, for me, I was just stay with it, get in, get better. That's the main focus.
What is your prior softball/baseball experience?
Hopefully good enough. I used to play growing up, 7th grade, so it's been a while. But me and my buddies would play when we would come back from college, go mess around at our old elementary school or whatever. So, like I said, hopefully hitting it straight and no errors defensively.
How are you just approaching the two-way situation in general, just knowing you're going to be going back and forth, and also the fact that you get to play your G League games, like 15 minutes from where you grow up. I mean, how are you looking at that, this experience and everything that's coming with it?
Being in Noblesville is going to be awesome. I'm super excited. Off the new arena where I'm in, really my backyard. So whether that's there or if it's downtown here playing with the Pacers, it's awesome opportunity. I mean, for me, like, there's nothing else I want more than to be here. Like, it's been my entire dream to be here, and if that's a two-way, if that's a standard, if that's whatever the case is, just being here.
What are the things you took from Summer League after you had a chance to digest that? And, what did you learn from that? What do you feel like you can apply the rest of the offseason?
Yeah, got to be better. Like, I think I'm my hardest critic about it.
I hope that was insightful. Fun times were had. So much more to get to. New TV for the Pacers. Haliburton talked about more realistic and interesting basketball stuff last week. A lot of other health updates. Gabe McLaughlin got traded. We'll get to all that coming up here on Locked On Pacers. But first, everybody, let me talk to you guys about the great people over at Indeed. Support for today's episode comes from Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and location. So less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on their platform, according to Indeed's data worldwide. And teams are similar to businesses. Having the right person, the right player, the right coach can change the outcome, can make things easier. The difference is not having somebody else do more work. It's about having somebody who knows what needs to happen and makes everything run smoother. So spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, but more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job, get the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Pacers. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Make your second listen Locked On Timberwolves. Jonathan Kuminga is headed to Minnesota. We have some late August signings, the end of real free agency, I would say, outside of Jalen Duren. Ben Beacon of Locked On Wolves will have more on Jonathan Kuminga, who might start a starter, getting signed almost 2 months in to free agency. News dump number one of the offseason. I try to do one or two of these throughout the summer to keep you updated on things that I think are important. We'll start with this. I know I just said Tyrese Haliburton spoke at the softball game, and he did speak at the softball game. A lot of his focus there was, obviously talked a little bit about his excitement for the season, but the game itself, the charity aspect of it, teaming up with the Colts, right after the Pacers and Colts also teamed up for a donation after the floods in central Indiana, right? So that's all great. Like the charity part of this is awesome. I'm glad they're able to put something together like that. That's strictly a community event between two huge teams that don't play the same sport. That's impressive. Before that, early in the month, we talked to Tyrese Haliburton about basketball things. He noted his involvement and thanked the Pacers quite a bit for their work in getting the Pacers a preseason game in Iowa State. If you did not realize that, the Pacers and Wolves, Jonathan Kuminga's team, how funny, opened the preseason playing in Iowa State. That is where the Wolves G League affiliate is, not specifically Ames, but in Iowa. And the Pacers, of course, Haliburton played there and he got injured. It's like final season, so he gets to go back and play there. He got engaged there. It's a very big deal for him. He also talked about putting together the softball game, but for the basketball part, he is 100% healthy. He said, of course, he's doing 5-on-5 runs in LA and things like that. You'd expect that for him. So, of course, that's of note for the Pacers. And he kind of laughed because there was a report. I can't remember who it was. It was a broadcaster at Summer League who said, sources say Tyrese Haliburton will be ready for the season. And he laughed like, yeah, duh. And he said, yes, I'm the source. I'm telling you, I will be. He also talked about Kelly Oubre and Larry Nance and their additions to the team. I have a story in Forbes if you want to read his thoughts on that. I'm saying that to kind of deflect because for some reason I closed the tab a minute ago, but that was the first time anybody had gone on the record outside of Chad Buchanan on setting the pace about his new teammates. He talked about his East Bay dunk also, which he said he hadn't been able to do since he was 20 years old. As for new teammates, he has not played yet with Ivica Zubac this summer. He said he's never played with a screen setter like him, so he's psyched about that. He said for Kelly Oubre, they work with the same trainer. He said, he's a guy who has definitely been annoying for me to go against throughout my career, so I'm excited for him to be on our side. If you've listened to a lot of Locked On Pacers this summer, you've also noted that I have mentioned defense most often as the thing that I think Oubre will help with the most because just generally of his sides, added Tyrese Haliburton of Kelly Oubre. I think that he adds a lot to us on both sides of the ball, but specifically defensively, being able to take on different challenges. You're going to need multiple guys to throw at all these good players. He's talking about the Eastern Conference. And I think Kelly fits right in with that group. And then he also called Larry. He said, Larry, who's been in the league for a long time, I think he's going to be able to help out with our front court depth. You can read more from my story there, but always good to hear lengthy, insightful answers from Tyrese Haliburton. 2 quick G League ones and then a big TV one. Yuki Kawamura, Pacers Summer League legend. Fans loved watching that dude for a good reason. He has signed with the Clippers on an Exhibit 10 deal. So that means he will not be obviously with the Boom. He'll be with Rui Hachimura. Japanese media will love that they are in the same place. But for those who wanted him with Noblesville or even with the Pacers, not happening. No two-way there. Braden Smith, I think, was a key block. I don't know that, but why would he want to come be a backup when he's trying to get back into the league and help a team win per his own admission? And earlier today, Gabe McLaughlin, who played for the Pacers last season, albeit for 1 game active before being waived for Micah Potter, was on a 10-day. He was with the Boom for much of last year, played for the Pacers Summer League team. He had his rights traded to the Maine Celtics today, or earlier on Thursday or Wednesday, I guess, for you listening. Sorry, I should probably not say today. The Boom in return got a first-round pick in the G League draft and got the rights to Isaiah Moore. He's a front court player who averaged almost a double-double last season. We'll see if he is going to come to the Boom or not, or if the pick was the big part of this. But always keep your radar up. I always say this every summer. This is the first Boom trade. Keep your eye on these being Exhibit 10 guys. That does not mean they will be in training camp for a single day, but that at least like last year you saw it. They trade with the Magic and acquire the rights to Jalen Slauson, and they trade for other guys who get their Exhibit 10s into camp. Like you have to keep an eye on these to see who could be playing in camp for the Pacers or be of note for them in the offseason. The last thing for the news dump, it is official. I originally discussed this myself on August 3rd when it was first reported by SBJ or Sportico. I can't remember. DAZN, D-A-Z-N, as you'll see it spelled, is the local partner for the Pacers local broadcast. I also have a story about this up in Forbes. We got to talk to some of them. Team executives and leaders about the decision. There was an exec from the zone there too, which was very helpful to just hear their thinking of how they landed on this, which their main citing of their accessibility choice was basically that, when you start going back to trace the origins of team local broadcasts, about almost 90%, like high 80s, were using cable. This is the Pacers explanation. And now that number is down to like 30%, right? And most people are watching via streaming. They mention iPads and consoles and all that. I watch games on an Xbox One. And so they said that they want to meet people where they are. If people are streaming, they want to do it that way. Now, obviously, it's a new app. I understand resistances to that. It has no connections with cable. You can't do cable and DAZN. So I understand there's going to be a lot of people frustrated about this. It's something new. It's something new they have to pay for. It is something they've never heard of. It is impossible to integrate potentially with the way that 30 to 50% of people are getting their television. And I straight up asked why they did not go with an over-the-air option. And they talked about not having a blank channel, and they don't have a Scripps or a Gray in market. So it was not as feasible, even if there were bids for that to be the case. And so they went with DAZN, and also part of it was if there is an aggregated home for all the local broadcasts at some point in future seasons, they wanted to potentially be somewhere that already could be that hub. Perhaps it's DAZN. They have a really big international footprint. So I'll say a couple things. One, I understand the frustrations. If you wanted a free broadcast, obviously, this is not that. Some teams have gone with the over-the-air. If you wanted something that you already have access to or you're familiar with, I understand that. I'll tell you this. I used DAZN for courtside in 1891, and it worked great for me. It was not perfect. There were some UI challenges along the way that I hope they sort out. But the payment worked very easily. Every game I tried to watch, both live and on demand, worked. That's all you really can ask for. And the early bird pricing for the coming season is $60 for the whole season. That's a good price. Like, if you can do that, I would recommend it to anybody in that instance. I'm not saying if you're frustrated, you're wrong to be. I do think the price is good, and I do think their product has worked for me, and they have experience with this in a lot of international settings. Again, and I understand that locally, no one's really aware of who they are. I'm not telling you how to feel. I'm telling you my thoughts and my insight from this, but certainly an interesting choice. Not one that I think even a month ago people would have expected. to be the answer. I think YouTube TV was a lot of people's expectation, not in the league, like of fans that I talked to because of the reporting, but DAZN it is. And if there's more information on that, I will talk about that. And now we pivot. The last Pacers note of the day, Bennedict Mathurin is with the Pelicans on a deal that is eerily similar in value to Kelly Oubre's. And I had fans talking about who should be on the team and who isn't, and money and all these things. And I have lots of thoughts on this. Some of them kind, some of them not. Let's talk about that to close out today's Locked On Pacers. And we are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today. And every single day your second listen should be Locked On Pelicans. Jake Madison will tell you why the Pelicans finally decided to do free agency and sign a player, and why Ben Mathurin was that player. And you should listen to Locked On NBA Game Night because you can hear myself and Ryan Blackburn talk about Kuminga and Jordan Miller and Ben Mathurin, and the actual reason that this week all of a sudden became a pressure point for New Orleans and Minnesota to make these moves. There actually is a deadline coming up this weekend that the Pacers don't really care about that matters a great deal in the timing of all these things. It has to do with the stretch provision. Okay, so here's what happened. Today, it is revealed by several insiders that Ben Mathurin is signing with the Pelicans. 2 years, $16 million, player option. That's a good bet on yourself kind of deal for Mathurin. There's a lot of context missing from this that I think fans are missing. Of course, there's a lot of Pacers adjacent thoughts that I think are completely misguided. And there's a lot of focus on Kelly Oubre, which I understand because their contracts are so similar, but I think the wrong player should be the takeaway from this. So I have so many things that I want to talk about as it pertains to this. So first of all, a lot of just at that price, the Pacers should have just kept him. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's a low contract, I suppose, for Ben Mathurin. Don't get me wrong. I think he's good. However, that would just not have been possible. That's not how it goes if you're with your incumbent team. When you get traded, and especially when you get hung into qualifying offer hell, there's just this perception and luster drop that happens to every player. It's almost like guys who get bought out. Like, it just something happens to your perceived value and how you get negotiated with. When that happens, you can go back a year ago and the same thing happened with Quentin Grimes, right? Like, it's just how it goes for these players. Had he not been traded, and clearly, I will talk about this in a second, but his trade value is kind of known from this contract. Had he not been traded in a deal where he was basically just viewed as salary, he might have been able to get much more money than this. Had he not been on a team that did not prioritize him at all this offseason, and the Clippers, who, after giving him a qualifying offer, signed Bradley Beal, traded for Grady Dick, traded for Brandon Ingram, gave Derek Jones chances to play the three, and I'm missing, they got Keen Wagler, and I'm still missing a player they got at 2-3 for some reason. Like, he wouldn't even have played. They have too many players. They would have had to cut somebody to keep him. The team that drafted you has a different feeling about you because you were with them the whole time. This is not always true, but you were with them the whole time. They know your system fit. They've guided your growth, right? It's much more easier and compelling for that team to pay a player. Once you get traded, it's all changed. So the first thing is, if he was still with the Pacers this whole time, he would not be signing 2 for $16. It would be just different. 1. Okay. 2, that this was his market. 2 years, $16 million, $8 million a year should tell you everything that I tried to tell you about his trade value back in February. Third-year guys who just are available for some reason in the final year of their rookie scale deal, even if they seem like a good player, they just don't have that much trade value because everybody knows they're going to have to be paid much more handsomely than their current rookie scale value. And if their team is willing to move them, there's generally a reason for that. That's related to Jarris Walker and Ben Shepherd this year, who are in the third year of their rookie deals and heading into expiring contracts. When I talk to people around the league, which I did several times, there was this huge range of contracts. Some guessed like $20 million. They cited Giddey, they cited Kuminga, and I got all that. Totally get it. And some cited far less money than that, citing like similar to them skill set players to Mathurin, like the very much score first, low passing guards whose defense comes and goes, but doesn't show up in the stats with stocks, right? Like Ben Mathurin is, I think, a good on-ball defender, but it doesn't show up in that way. And if you compare his contracts to some players like that, he should not be in the 20 million range. So there was just a lot of variation in his market perception. And you combine that with restricted free agency and you get this, you get 2 years, $16 million, where it's hard for him to get out there and actually get a deal. And then the other factor, of course, is that, when you're restricted, you become like the least priority for these other teams because they don't know they're going to get you and they tie up their space, their exception. in trying to get you. And if they don't get you, they've just wasted their time. And so you often fall back to last, right? That's why Mathurin just happened and Duren is still sitting out there and Peyton Watson just happened last week, right? It's just the timing of the offseason. And by nature of that timing, most of the money's gone. So had he been unrestricted, he would have got more than this, right? So there's a lot of factors that I think are missing from just like, oh, if he was on this for the Pacers. That said, to spin it back to the Pacers, the question that people are asking or talking about is, would you rather have Mathurin or Oubre on these basically roughly equivalent contracts? Reminder, Kelly Oubre does not have a player option. So like you have to consider that in the values that Mathurin's deal is probably less team friendly. However, one, I hate the notion that this is some choice that the Pacers like could have made at some point, because they would have not made the Zubac trade and they would have had a ton more spending power. They could have had both. In that case, they would not have a starting center at all, but they could have had both players. So I hate that that is how it's been spun. I know that that's because their contracts are the same, but it feels like people are saying, oh, they could have one or the other. Well, no. But two, Mathurin is the answer. If you're asking me who I would rather have on 2 for 16, it's Ben Mathurin. He's better, and clearly impacted by restricted free agency. There's just no money left at the end. But my final point is this. The player that I thought about when I saw this contract, actually I have 2 more points. One is, when I saw that, I thought, okay, this makes me feel like even stronger about that the Pacers made the right choice to trade him when they did, and more proof of concept that he was basically just salary ballast back in February. He did not have a ton of trade value at the time, and that's why he was used in the way he was in a trade. My other thought was, people are spinning. I go to my timeline, everybody's talking about Kelly Oubre, and I'm like, the guy I'm thinking about is Jarris right now. And I do this too much, and I know this is like too extreme of an opinion. You'd rather watch the guy play and develop them more. But every time it gets to this situation where there's a player going into their 4th season, they're 3 years into their rookie deal, and their future's kind of murky and their rotation spot's kind of murky, I always say, like, if there's no plan, just trade him. Just trade him. I said that with Aaron Holiday. They did trade him for Isaiah Jackson's the draft pick. I said that with Goga. They held on to him and then just cut him. They traded Ben Mathurin in the salary trade. Like, it gets so dicey when you just don't know what's coming down the line. And obviously, like, just trade him is too extreme. I understand that, but let me just name some names to you. Jonathan Kuminga, Quentin Grimes, Cam Thomas, Ben Mathurin, Peyton Watson. So you might be thinking I'm naming very recent restricted free agents who had like what seemed like gritty restricted free agencies. Like, it was tough. It was the negotiations. And you're right, I am. Can I tell you a fun fact about all of those players? All of those players who were first-round picks, who were good and could have gotten paid some extent, none of them, not one, is on the team that drafted them. Not a single one. Cam Thomas, not on the Nets anymore. He went through the Bucks. He's not in the league. Quentin Grimes, I don't even remember who drafted him. He's been on so many teams now. The Knicks, right? The Knicks to the Mavs to the Sixers, down to the Lakers. Kuminga, the Warriors to the Hawks, now to Minnesota. Ben Mathurin from Indiana to LA, now to New Orleans. Peyton Watson from Denver to Cleveland. These situations suck for everyone. When you go into the 3rd year with no extension, I'm not saying the extension like sours a team and player relationship, but it does set up this expiring contract, tough negotiation, restricted free agency nebulous, especially in this era of tight spending. And, you know, if you're really good, maybe your team will keep you. I think Peyton Watson's a little unique in that his team was so expensive, right? But I say all this to say, these situations are just not as simple as everybody says. I went back to last year and checked. I did my last video or podcast I did last year talking about Ben Mathurin's extension. Here's a comment. I'd pay him now to save a few dollars. I think the key here is play design. If you designed a system around him and he gets more shots, he's easily scoring over 20 points a game. Somebody's going to overpay next year, and it can be avoided if we extend. Well, guess what? Nobody overpaid. Good thing the Pacers didn't extend, or they'd have paid him more than his clear market value. Another one, I went back and forth for a while. The day he did not extend, I tweeted no extension officially for Ben Mathurin. Somebody said they were surprised. I said I was not surprised at all. It made no sense for either side. If you listen to Locked On Pacers every day last year, I explained exactly why. That it made no sense for either side to me on the way. Somebody replied. They said, I disagree. If we would have extended him now, we could definitely be getting him at a cheaper price than when he's a restricted free agent. He's going to demand 30 to 40 million or more. We should pay him now while his value is 20 to 25. So they would have paid him 3 times his market value by extending him at 20 to 25. This is why if someone's price is kind of unknown and is based a little bit on speculation and potential, you don't extend them. You just don't know how this is going to go. Even if their season goes okay, then great, pay them. If they play well, pay them. If they don't, or they continue on the path that it looks like they're on, just keep going. So I say all this to say, I'm not trying to like toot my own horn because I get a lot of stuff wrong. I am saying people think way too much about the team side and not about the player side. And I'm going to reference this exact stat all season when it comes to Jarris and Ben Shepherd, that all those guys I just said are on different teams because time comes for everyone. Restricted free agency is tough, and teams get in tight spending situations and don't often prioritize their 9th or 10th guy. And so all this thought about Ben Mathurin, I'm rambling, led me to thinking about Jarris and this season for him and his future with the Pacers. And I thought Ben Mathurin would be back a year ago. And then a lot changed with the Pacers situation. But just keep that in mind with Jarris this year. He's got to play well. He's got a lot of pressure on him, and things will be tough for him if he does not. And the Pacers will have some tough decisions to make, not in the next year, in the next 6 months. In the next 6 months. A better player than Jarris just got 2 for 16. Keep that in mind. Anyway, these are my thoughts about Ben Mathurin. He's on a different team. These are the Pacers news updates of the week. I just rambled for so long. I have to remember how to do my job. Thank you all so much for listening today. You can find me on social media at Tony R. East, and this podcast is at Locked On Pacers. Tomorrow, I'll do one of my personal favorite exercises of every offseason. I keep saying that. I just like my offseason schedule. Veteran questions. All offseason, every year. All we talk about is young guys getting better, who's rotation spots, this or that, the new guys. That's all great. We just throw the veterans to the side because they're a known commodity and they're older. We're going to talk about them tomorrow. Thank you all so much for listening today. Back tomorrow with that. Always talking Pacers right on this feed. We'll see you very soon.